Well, it's a hard rain, it's a purple rain. Taps the levee and leaves a stain.
Hey everybody, I'm Mark Finkelpearl. This is Jeffrey Himes, and you're listening to our brand new theme song for Hard Rain and Pink Cadillacs. That is Billy Kemp with lyrics written by our own Jeffrey Himes. Jeff, tell people who Billy is.
Yeah, Billy's somebody I've known since 1980. He had a really popular country rock band in Baltimore, and I was starting out in journalism. We became friends. I asked him if he wanted some help with lyrics. He said yes. So we've now written 120 songs or whatever. And he's had his own career. He's played the Grand Ole Opry with Jeannie Pruitt. He's been on the road with Terry Gibbs, Tommy Overstreet, Bandana, and Tommy Conwell and Young Rumblers. He's put out a bunch of solo records. He was half of the folk duo Jenny and Billy. So he's a talented guy. He wrote the music to my lyrics. He's doing the vocals and guitar by himself, and it's been a real treat for us to have a theme song finally.
Yeah, and we thank you, Billy, if you're out there watching or listening, and we really appreciate all the effort that you put into this. Thank you.
Yeah.
Today is Darrell Scott on Hard Rain and Pink Cadillacs, and Darrell has lived an incredible life, almost like something out of a John Steinbeck novel. He comes from a family who were itinerant, who moved around the country in search of work. He was in Southern California, right at sort of the height of the Beach Boys and the Southern California sound. Tell us what we need to know before we throw to the interview about Darrell Scott.
Yeah, Darrell is perhaps best known for writing some famous songs for other people. Long Time Gone by the Dixie Chicks, You'll Never Leave Harlan Alive by Patti Loveless. But he's also, a great artist in his own right. He's put out a bunch of albums, worked with the best musicians in Nashville, has been able to have a career that incorporates singer-songwriter folk and mountain string band music and blues. He's a great guitarist, great singer, someone I admire a lot, and I'm glad we have him on the show.
So without further ado, our conversation with Darrell Scott. Look, it's Darrell Scott. How are you, Darrell?
Hey, I'm doing good. Hello, Mark. Hello, Jeffrey.
See, this is a Hard Rain and Pink Cadillacs podcast. This is our 4th episode, and we're glad to have my good friend Darrell Scott with us. So we'll just jump right in. And Darrell, when you and I have talked, we've talked a lot about the sort of tug of war in your musical career and your personal life between Kentucky and Indiana, or the rural and the urban, and the sort of country music and other stuff. And you talk about growing up in Indiana, and you once told me that outside your door it was Indiana, and later it was California, but inside your house it was still Kentucky. Say what you mean.
That's the way it felt to me. Yeah, that's the way it felt to me. Well, a few reasons for that. We moved around a fair amount when I was a kid. I was born in Kentucky. My folks were from Kentucky, but my dad did a lot of what a lot of folks did back in the day, which is follow factory work from the South, from the fields, and then get up into the factories. Well, my 2 older brothers were born in Detroit area because my dad was working car factory. Then the next place we lived as a factory center was northern Indiana, which was basically the steel mills, and my dad was doing that work. So my two younger brothers were born there. I was the one born in the between back in Kentucky. And so what it represents is when you move around a lot, we continue that on to California, and then I continued it as an adult myself up to Canada and Boston and stuff like that. Um, when you move around a lot as a family, when you're the new kid at the school, you know, I'm a stranger. I don't know people. I'm the quiet one, and at home, that's our nucleus. So that's the Kentucky. And with my mom and dad, uh, it didn't feel like it mattered where we were. It was Kentucky inside the house and Indiana outside or California, this or that. Because inside the house, the foods were Kentucky foods. The music was, we were playing music in the living room. That was Kentucky stuff, gospel stuff, country things. And the general, upbringing was Kentucky. I mean, what else would my mom and dad do or be but Kentucky? And so the school, would bring in the California kids or the Indiana, Tennessee, Kentucky times, a lot of moving around. So that's what I mean by it. And it makes you sort of insular as a family. And so that therefore that's where the music steps in because um, we could do two things. Eventually, my dad started working chain link fences. So we all knew how to build fences, and we would be his work crew, on Saturdays or after school and all that stuff. And we knew how to play music. And again, that insular, we're working together, going to church together at that time, and we're playing music together. So that's the insular thing I'm talking about.
So,
One other detail,
so
yeah,
one thing is that, so inside your house, your dad's sort of singing Hank Williams and Johnny Cash songs and some of
yeah,
his own, which we'll
yeah.
talk about in a minute. But outside your door, it's the Beach Boys and the Byrds, and you're an American teenager. And so how does
Yeah,
that sort of, you know, double life affect you as a musical kid?
I didn't get the double life until I was in my teens. That was California. So that was the 70s, basically. We
Mhm.
moved there in 1970. So yeah, that's where, radio stations at the time, pop radio would be playing Three Dog Night and whatever was going on at the time. Beatles, a little earlier than that. I just thought it was adding to the musicality. Certainly, we had a country and gospel-ish background, but the pop sounding stuff sounded really cool to me. I had an older brother who was really our kind of musical mentor guy, and he was exploring things like he'd always been a guitar player guy, but now he was a vocalist guy. So he was following like Glenn Campbell vocals, Tom Jones, or some of those, really great vocalists of the 70s. And it just added to this thing,
And
whatever
it,
the
and,
music
and
stuff.
and it connected in your own head, these two different
Yeah.
worlds.
No, it just seemed like all music. I mean, eventually, I'll tell you another one because at this time we were living in Southern California. I started getting into jazz fusion, and there was a particular bent of jazz fusion going on in California versus New York or anywhere else. It was, and it seemed more attainable. Like oh, it just didn't seem as far out as the New York stuff, and it seemed like
Mhm.
it followed a blues progression, and in some cases, like the Crusaders or something like that. Uh, uh, Tom Scott and the LA Express. It seemed like even I could understand that if that was jazz fusion, then I could even be influenced by that. And somewhere around that time is where the singer-songwriter listening on my part started happening. The Gordon Lightfoots, the James Taylors, Joni Mitchell. That was also going on while I was a teenager in Southern California. That was piling in.
And did the fact that they were playing acoustic guitars make the connection to your dad's music make more sense?
You know, I think I would have been in a rebellious period starting up. And so the way I looked at it was Gordon Lightfoot was my discovery. Even though, Lightfoot is not like, Ozzy Osbourne or something at the time. And it can relate, to, my dad's country music, certainly. But he was my find. I found Lightfoot and I found those songs. And um, in a way, I found folk in an offshooty kind of way through Lightfoot as well. Uh, and so but I did introduce my dad to the Lightfoot music, and he liked it, you know. But I guess I was trying to be a little on the rebellious side, like get out of the country music only, which was all that was going to be playing in the cab of my dad's truck, to, to pop radio and to the singer-songwriter thing. And then FM was happening around at that time. So album plays, of non-country stuff. And again, this jazz fusion thing that just crept in because of where I lived.
So I should explain
So
to the
just
audience.
weird stuff.
I should explain to the audience that one of the reasons we're talking about this is that Darrell has just produced and released a second album of his dad's original songs and his dad's recordings.
Yeah.
And he produced the record and played on it, and it sort of is part of his own career, which has included writing for hits for Nashville artists like the Dixie Chicks and Brad Paisley and Tracy Lawrence, and also playing in bands with like Steve Earle and Guy Clark and Robert Plant. And so but all of this, to my ears at least, is fascinating because of this tug of back and forth tug between the rural and urban aspects of his career. And you told me once that at a certain point you realized that a lot of these songs that your dad was singing around the house were not old Hank and Johnny songs, but were songs that he had actually written. Sort of describe how you figured that out and what the impact of that was.
Well, the styles were similar because my dad loved Hank Williams, just idolized him. And then when Hank died, my dad was kind of lost for a while until he found Johnny Cash. And then he started on the Cash thing. So in each case, my dad would try to sing like Johnny Cash or Hank Williams or write songs like those guys. It would be in the realm of the styles, let's say. But I always knew which songs were my dad's and which, were Johnny's and all that kind of stuff. But there was one song that it took me into my 20s to realize it wasn't a Johnny Cash song. And it's the song, the first record I put out of my dad's. It was the title of that record because I think it's my dad's best song.
That's
But it's also,
that's the Weary Way, right?
yeah, This Weary Way it's called.
This Weary Way.
And yeah, and but it's just good. It's Hank style, and to me it's my dad's best song, and it's very, very forthcoming and honest in its where the narrator's coming from. He's just telling us, blatant truth, old country music kind of truth.
It seems to me there's this thing that happens to a lot of kids, where they realize that their parents, their mom or the dad, aren't just their parents, but they're capable of doing something special. Is that?
Yeah. Well, I found that I bet I was more like in my 20s, because I just have to go back to that rebellious thing, where I did want to find my own music. So I did want to play my own music. One of the hardest things I ever had to do was, I guess I was 18, maybe 19. And my dad was just playing in bars, in Southern California, San Bernardino Valley area, just pure up bars, 5 sets a night, 45 minutes on, 15 off. Was to tell my dad that I was quitting his band. his bar band and joining a house band at a, fancier or whatever, more popular place. And that was one of the hardest things I ever had to do. But so that rebellious thing was important to me. And I didn't leave his band in a rebellious fighting kind of way. I just said, "Hey, Dad, I want to be with, uh, different kind of sound and different monies and just keep expanding here and stuff." So I think those things were really hard for him to hear from me, that I'm quitting his band basically as an 18, 19-year-old. Um,
But
but that seemed really necessary.
he had raised you and your four brothers sort of as his band, and had sort of
Yeah,
groomed you to become, take over the family business in a weird, sort of way.
yeah, exactly. And because he never played music full time until, I don't know, 1975. And so maybe in his late 30s. So he was a full on, factory worker guy or this construction fence stuff eventually. But he never played music full time. He would always, augment fencing to the music. But by that time, that was what he was doing, the 5, 6 nights a week of playing bars. And so that was
Darrell,
yeah,
I want to just ask about those economics because you're
yeah.
quite an itinerant family. Was that because he felt that he could do better as he changed industries? And how did that manifest in the bar bands? Did he do the bar bands just because he wanted to try and make extra money, or was it for the pleasure of the music?
I think it was the pleasure of the music. I mean, my dad's one of those guys who would play at home. He'd set up literally a little PA, and I don't know why he always felt he had to play through a PA at home, but he did. And so he'd have like a PA, and he'd sing through that. And I don't do that. I mean, I'm lucky to, sing around in the house or something for some reason. Uh, I don't associate, being home. I work in the studio and stuff, but just sort of sitting at the table, like it wouldn't occur to me to go grab the guitar and sing a song. But for my dad, he would sing at home. And to me, him playing in the bars, yes, it's making a little bit of extra money. And in those days, it's like 50, $75 a night per person type thing. Um, but it was really the love of playing country music, calling an old Carl Smith song or a Haggard song, coming up, like right now with an intro and there's solos and, just bar band pickup kind of stuff. Also, one or two of my brothers would be in the band too. So I think it was my dad's way of certainly playing country music um, outside of the house, but also playing with his sons and and then writing songs at home, but those songs would never show up at the bar gig, like never. They would never happen. Uh, and then I'm also writing at home. I'm 12 and 15 and 18, and I'm discovering songwriting and songwriters. Um, uh, and so that's why I don't think I really had a full appreciation of my dad's songs until I was maybe in my mid 20s, when I started seeing like, yeah, he's my dad, all right, and we played country music and this, that, and the other. But man, he's really good. He's telling the truth. And what else, from my perspective, what else were we to look for? From our singer-songwriters, truth tellers, was to tell us the truth. And I thought my dad was doing that pretty well.
What happened in 1975 that he went pro and that became his only job being a musician?
I think the second divorce to my mom, they married and divorced and married again and divorced. And that second marriage was them moving from Kentucky. We were all in Kentucky at that time. And the new start was to go to California, the Sunshine State. an outdoor working person could work more days per year and all that kind of stuff. And so when that second marriage to my mom broke up, I think he broke up. And he was like, whatever I've done thus far, I'm throwing it out the window, and I will play country music at a bar and do the 5 sets a night and all that. I think that, from my point of view, that's where that snapped. By the way, and now that I'm saying that out loud, that's about when he started. He started drinking. Was about that same time. Um, he started, and once he found drinking, it was kind of a strong pull that he wanted, and that ties right in with the bars and playing honky tonks and all that. So that happened all at about the same time. That's that same period to me. That's how I put it.
Let's talk a little more about your career. When you became interested in these singer-songwriters, um, I assume that you became interested in a different kind of lyric, not that um, the Hank Williams or Johnny Cash lyrics are deficient in any way, but Joni Mitchell and Gordon Lightfoot were trying something different. And then when you went to Tufts University in Massachusetts, you studied poetry, and that gave you sort of another relationship with language. And could you talk about how you pursued language in that way and how it ended up influencing your own lyric writing?
Yeah. Well, it did start from the singer-songwriter stuff, but also I was dabbling in poetry, reading poetry uh, back, oh, I don't know, my later teens, Robert Frost or even Edgar Allan Poe poetry, and just kind of dabbling into American poets. But then when I went to college at eventually Tufts, uh, I was an English major, and really words and ideas. I was a huge Ray Bradbury fan, for example. I just love his stories and his way of writing and telling a story. Um, but the singer-songwriters, I just thought they were um uh, somehow I thought they were telling us the truth. And I know I said that a while ago about the country songs too, because a great country song, I hope is telling us the truth. That's always been my sensibility about it. And it just felt like these singer-songwriters were talking about more than just the regular love affair or love broken kind of 3-minute country song approach. They had a bigger world in which to write from in lyrics and more imaginative songs, both compositionally and lyrics and words. And so that just all led me, in one hand, I was always listening to guitar players and harmony and musicality, but then on the other hand, I was listening to lyrics. And then this Jackson Brown world or the Leonard Cohen world was just like amazing stuff. And so I would just naturally walk over there. Um, and to me, the poetry time that I spent, it wasn't like, you know what, I want to make my songs better, so I'm going to study English for 4 or 5 years and then I'll be a better songwriter. I truly, in my mind, was on a path like maybe music is over for me, and maybe I'm going to walk toward being a poet, a creative writing kind of thing that I thought I would launch out of Tufts and into a master's degree somewhere. That was the two roads I could go. Get back towards songs with all that I had been exposed to, whether it was the singer-songwriter stuff or the poetry or in plays and short story and all that I'd been exposed to, or either go to a creative writing program or bring it back to songs and see.
What was going on musically? I know you're a guitarist and play other instruments, and started out with country, of course, and branched out from there. What was your evolution
Yeah.
on that side of things?
Well, there was that jazz fusion thing I picked up as just listening. I wasn't playing it or tearing it up, but being influenced by it, Steely Dan, that kind of thing was going on while I was in California. And by 1980, I'd moved up to Canada. And and so musically, I remember a very important album uh, when I was up in Canada was Emmylou Harris, "Roses in the Snow." And I was an Emmylou fan from, her Luxury Liner and, the great records her first three, four, five records, whatever, fantastic stuff. So then out comes Emmy doing a bluegrass influenced record, and I was all over it. In terms of it just was huge to me. So then I could start seeing into Ricky Skaggs. There's the name Ricky Skaggs, and who's this guy Tony Rice, and then that leads me to David Grisman, that leads me to Sam Bush and Newgrass Revival. So a thread that happened right in there was the bluegrass thread. I would actually rather call it, maybe more accurately, newgrass thread, because I wasn't in first generation bluegrass interest. I was in second generation bluegrass interest. So as a player, that was influencing me. So now I was on the radar of this really cool, bluegrass influenced music that the Emmylou Harris album kind of brought me to. So that started getting into my brain, and I started going to folk and bluegrass festivals up in New England and seeing, Hot Rise and seeing Seldom Seen and seeing Skaggs with his more country band kind of thing, and Doyle Lawson. And so I just started opening to that. So that was going on musically that hadn't exactly happened before. And
So
then
you're playing both acoustic and electric at that point, or?
yeah, mostly electric though. I was always an electric guy. I was always the telly guy. And a lot of those bar bands in California had a tradition of uh, maybe the lead guitar player doubling on pedal steel, and I was one of those guys. So I could sit at the steel and with the telly in my lap, and play half of a solo on one instrument and flip and play the other half. So I was electric was always my thing. But then it's the bluegrassy thing that started me, so like even getting a half decent acoustic guitar. I only had a telly and pedal steel and stuff prior to that.
Let me ask you about your facility on guitar. When did you realize, that you could develop pretty strong chops, or that you had pretty strong chops for, I mean, it's not everybody who can sit at a pedal steel and play half of a solo on that and flip to the Telecaster. And I mean, that
Uh-huh.
you make it sound easy, but it's not. How did that all develop?
Yeah. Well, that's the weird thing about it. Somebody will write someday about how Southern California pedal steel players, Dan Dugmore is one of those, for example, do play pedal steel and electric. A lot of bar bands, you were more employable if you could play both. That was like right at the top of the list. Uh, why hire this telly guy over here when you could hire this telly guy who plays pedal steel too? So that was part of it. But I loved steel. I grew up, with the Hank Williams sound, but also one of my favorites was Ralph Mooney, who played with Waylon. I mean, and also with Haggard, early on and stuff. I just love the steel. And because you're playing 5 sets a night and 5 nights a week, I literally would find myself a better player at the end of at 2 a.m. than I was at 9 p.m. of that night, because I'm coming up with intros. You have to, like now, and outros. Get all the band out of here at the same time without us all looking like fools, because we're a pickup band, and things are unplanned. You don't know who's taking the first solo, in case there's another instrumentalist, a fiddler, or something like that. Um, and so that on the job training made me better almost nightly. I could see the differences. And you have to come up with an intro on every single song in a bar night and an outro, and you have to have solos most likely. And so each of those every night, I'm just getting better and better at that. So I would see that kind of jumping, going forward kind of way with the licks, the chicken picking stuff. In country music, honky tonk style. This is a terrible thing to say because Jeffrey, I know you're a jazzer. You love jazz. But for a country musician, playing Bob Wills is as close as that cat's going to get to playing straight up jazz in a country setting. You see what I mean? And
Mhm.
then if you're doing rockabilly, which you are somewhere in the night, there's that, from a bar player kind of point of view. And then there's ballad stuff. There's Johnny Cash with the TikTok. Uh, you know, there's a huge guitar encyclopedia thing that goes on in honky tonk country music, and I was a part of that. I'd look forward to the song that had a little bit of jam on it, or a bluegrass kind of thing, and then do some licks of that. So the bar was that setting where I could learn how to do that stuff.
And so how did you get from, the Northeast, New England, Canada, New York to Nashville?
Right. Well, I'd been coming to Nashville since I was 6, in terms of vacation. So when my family finally took a vacation from the steel mills at the time, it was Nashville, Tennessee. It was the Ryman Auditorium, the Opry. It was going to tour the Opry stars' houses. You drive by their house, and that's where Kitty Wells lives and all that stuff. Um, so there was always a visitation to Nashville all through my young years, through teenage times. We even lived here twice for like 2 months. Uh, but Nashville was always there. But I never wanted to be in Nashville until I had sort of got myself together artistically and all that kind of stuff. So by the time I was 32, 33, that's when I felt, okay, I guess I'm ready to get down to Nashville. The other thing that prompted that was I'd started a family, had one child, and we wanted another one on the way. So family, having a house. My dad had built a house in just outside of Nashville that he was selling, and that's the time we moved down from Boston down there, and he would let us slip on payments, for a couple years till we can get on our feet. And the other thing that influenced that move was the record that I had made, and I did make the entire record that I was talking about for SBK, and they shelved it. Um, Within a month of them shelving it, uh, I moved to Nashville, and so to me it was like okay, we made a record now, but it never came out. Now what? And so I thought the now what would serve me better if I were in a music city that, has the stories of failed albums and failed this, that, and the other. I mean, you're almost nothing unless you have some of those stories in Nashville as a player, as a writer, as an artist, any of that stuff. And so I wanted to be there as opposed to, oh, getting stoned in the van, at a set in New England from a bar band, and then I'm telling my story of how I had a record deal last year and then they dumped it. Like I was not going to be that story. I'd tell the same story down in Nashville, but at least I thought maybe we could pick up something. Something would be understood about it in Nashville as opposed to just another story between sets at an Elks Lodge or something.
And when did you start getting traction in Nashville?
It probably took a couple of years. First of all, I didn't have a publishing deal then. When the record fell apart in New York, the publishing fell apart with it. It was one of those, they shake hands. And so the representation just went away. But the Nashville office at EMI knew of me and knew about that record, actually. And the conversation was like, well, we think he's more Nashville than New York anyway. So are you guys interested in him? And it took about 2 years for the Nashville office um, to offer me, like a junior starting publishing thing as a staff writer. Some of it, the New York contract part had to be cleaned up before Nashville wanted to step in. And then I started hanging around with Guy Clark, who was an EMI writer, Verlin Thompson, who was an EMI writer. Um, And so sort of my folks I was hanging with had an EMI connection, and then then they offered me sort of a junior starting thing, and we just started up. And it was probably another 5, 6 years before cuts started happening, and but one of the most important things that happened, other than just I had a place to land and start making some money for the family. Now we had 2 children. Um, was the head of EMI said, "Hey, why don't you make a record down in the basement with our demo studio, and just do anything you'd like, and we support you. There's the studio for free, songs that you write and stuff." And so that became my record. The first record that actually came out was Aloha from Nashville, and that's when that happened, because the head of the Nashville office said, "Go down there and make a record, whatever you want to do," and that's what I did.
Well, talk about "You'll Never Leave Harlan Alive," which is one of your most famous songs, and what was the gestation of it, and why did
Yeah,
it work the way it did?
right. In my family, the Kentucky family on the Scott side, there was a Scott, would have been my great grandfather, who left family history. He was excommunicated, kicked out of the family, so to speak. Uh, and he did something wrong. Uh, and Granny, who was sort of the matriarch of the family, early 1900s, uh, told the kids, "You're never to speak of him. You're never to talk about him. That's the end of it. He's done." And that was gospel. That's what happened. Even 100 years later, I find it hard to get any of my family uh, who are alive to talk about it at all. So anyway, that always struck me. Like, what happened to that guy and what did he do? And the only thing I knew about him is he played banjo and he was a music teacher. So I thought, well, maybe that's where the music stuff came from. I want to know about this guy. Anyway, I go to Harlan County uh, in the library, where they have microfiche, and you can look at old newspapers and records and this, that, and the other. I'm not much of a researcher, but I was in there trying to see, where did this guy go? Where did he die? Did he get remarried? Any of that? Anyway, part of that also was to go to a part of the county where my family, I know that they courted uh, this guy who left history and Granny, um, looking for uh, gravestones. So I was literally out there with my dad turning over gravestones of an old decrepit, you know, cemetery thing. Um, and I was just trying to find out about him. And about a week later or so, that's when it turned into a song. So I didn't really go on a research project for a song. I went to find out about a great grandfather, what happened to him.
And then how did it get recorded by other people?
Uh, I recorded it first. So that album where the head of the Nashville office said, "Get down there in the basement and make any record you want to. We support you." That was one of the songs I had. And so that was on that record. And while it didn't do gangbusters as my own record, 2 years later, Sugar Hill took the record as was, and put it out. And now, a lot more people knew about it through their distribution and their radio this and promotional that and all that. Um, and then I would sing it. By that time, I'm in Sam Bush's band. I'm in Sam Bush band as his guitar player and singer and all that. And I'm doing it at Merle Fest. So if Sam gives me a slot, that's the song I'm doing. Or I did "It's a Great Day to Be Alive," which was also from that record. And so people started hearing about it there. The Sugar Hill thing, picking it up, was instrumental in letting more people know about it. Um, and then, next thing I know, Patty Loveless is recording it, and Brad Paisley kind of right at the same time. And since it had already been recorded and released once, there's not a permission per se that's needed on the second, third, fourth, and everything else recording. So I had released it, so it wasn't like you were holding it for a certain artist. Once it's released, it's open season for a song. One of the most personal songs I've written is one of the most covered songs I've written. I sometimes can't understand that.
You once told me that, every time you try to sit down and to write a song for George Strait or, or on a particular topic that you have in mind, that the results are never that great. But when just start a song and follow where it leads, that's when the best songs happen. And
Yeah,
can you
yeah.
explain? That seems a little counterintuitive, but can you explain why that's so?
Mm. It may have something to do with that authenticity thing again. Uh, uh, we might be able to tell as human beings when we're being sold a load of shit, or when we're not being told the truth to, right? I think we might know that. Uh, and I think the same I feel is there in songs. Um, you know, I, an amazing practice, and I got to do some of these practices, is to go to the yearly awards of a particular song thing like ASCAP or BMI or something like that, and hear the top 50 songs of the year like portrayed right there in one evening. And because I never listened to country music, you could hear how forgettable like 49 of these songs were. Like there they are in one evening. They play the intro or the chorus or something, and up comes the guy and it gets the award and all that. And like you already forgot about him, and it's the current year in which it was released. That's kind of ironic, but there's a difference between that, and that's trying to write for a George Strait cut, and then writing about following your own thing that's forcing you forward to write about this or to think about this or to divulge this. There's another thing there, and it has nothing to do with uh, trying to get on a George Strait record. And so there are two different brains. There's a skill set that could try to write for something like that. And in my experience, all you're going to get is another song as bad as some of those songs I was hearing at the award shows. Like there's no distinction there. We already don't know what the number one song of last year was, you know, uh, of this, like this week now, what was it a year ago? And we're all blurry eyed. We would have no idea. But these songs that come from some other kind of seems like an honest place stick around in us more. There's something about us that feels that we're being given something worth holding on to for, I mean, maybe the rest of our lives. I still circle around, for example, Townes Van Zant's To Live's to Fly. That's a cornerstone for me. I touch upon that song in my 20s, my 40s, now my 60s. That song doesn't get like, oh, I liked that a long time ago, but it doesn't serve me anymore. Not true. Great songs are touch points for a lifetime. And that's, I know because I'm moved by songs for a lifetime, you know? I want to be a part of those songs. I don't want to be a part of the song that's forgotten on the award show 1 year later from when it was released. That's a factory, and the other one is, I don't know, a gift.
While we're there, can we drill down on Towns just a little bit? I mean, if you were
Sure.
hanging out with Guy Clark in the 80s, you must have had some moments with Townes Van Zandt. And I'm also curious as to how Harm Swift Way ended up on the Band of Joy record and all of that.
Right.
Can you talk about your relationship with Towns beyond To Lives to Fly?
Yeah. So I was hanging with Guy in the 90s. My first session with Guy was 94.
Okay.
So, and I didn't move to Nashville till 92. Uh, and so it's more the 90s than the 80s. But I did meet Townes. We were working on Guy's Dublin Blues album. Actually, we had finished it, and the record company was having a little thing at a bar in Hillsborough Village, and we just finished the album, and we, the players and whatever, we all went over there. And Guy's, I'm Townes is the one there. He's been there all day. Uh, I meet him then, but it was my real important time to be around Towns was one night he was playing just a place called Douglas Corner. It's just a cinder block bar songwriter place in Nashville. Uh, it's not Bluebird. It's the antithesis of Bluebird. Uh, Towns is playing there, and there's like 8 people, and me and my songwriter friend are 2 of them. And Towns is, you know, can't sing and play. He's drunk off his ass. He needs a ride home. So my friend uh, says, "Look, I'll take Towns' car. You follow behind us." So we went to Towns' house in Smyrna. And then once we got there, we stayed up all night in his backyard, the 3 of us. And that was the real meeting and hanging with that guy, with Towns. And it was, first of all, he was one of my heroes. But second of all, he would rotate between just being regular Towns kind of, and then he'd turn kind of, he had a coyote side to him, um, to switch up on things and change almost the air in the room. And he did that a few times through the night too. And so I took that away from that night of just hanging out till the sun came up. Another one was going to Towns' memorial. Uh, Took place in Music Row, but at a church there. Um, and that was an amazing one where Guy came up, and there's a film that has Guy in there doing, he's doing a song of at the memorial, and Guy says, "I booked this gig 30 years ago," which to me meant like we've all been expecting Towns to die for the last 30 years. Uh, and then flash to the In Harm's Way thing. I never even knew that song until the Robert Plant session, and it was one of the last things we cut. And I just remember out of the whole album, the Band of Joy thing, and here's Robert Plant, great, uh, you know, amazing Robert Plant, Led Zeppelin, all that stuff, meets Towns Van Zandt on a song, and I find out that this is a Towns song. I mean, Towns has died, but here's the song, and I just remember getting chills at the session. Like Robert was in a room to the right of me in a isolation booth. I'm playing acoustic guitar tracking, and we're doing a Towns Van Zandt song, and it was huge to me. It was emotional. It was like, I don't know, it was one of those moments where I just thought I was in, like almost floating, doing a town song with Robert Plant, Buddy Miller, and all that stuff. So I always loved that song. And we do it in the shows with Robert, and I sang tenor with Robert in that song on the shows and also on the record. And I couldn't wait to that third verse to sing with Robert on this Towns thing. So it meant a lot to me. Yeah, Towns is might be the best. Steve Earle might be right about that one.
How did you end up in that band?
Buddy Miller.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Buddy Miller, who was the producer of it. I guess Buddy was putting together then an album band, uh, and had bass and drums, and Buddy would be, and he wanted a utility guy, is what I thought it was. So someone who could play mandolin on this one, or fretless banjo on that one, or pedal steel here, or uh, a second or acoustic guitar, bouzouki, this, that, and the other. So I think that was it. It was, and it was Buddy who brought me in on it. And the only other thing I played with Buddy was he produced a Jimmy Dale Gilmore record early on, when he and I both had just sort of recently moved to Nashville. And I'd sort of played that role on that record, some pedal steel, some acoustic, some mandolin and stuff like that.
Darrell, what did you learn working with Robert Plant?
Well, I learned that it was great fun to sing with Robert and Patty Griffin, because a lot of times the third part would be me, and Buddy would be more like on lead guitar and kind of doing that. But sometimes we'd all be singing. Uh, but it was also I also loved playing leads with Buddy, so we'd switch leads up. Sometimes on guitar, like guitar to guitar kind of thing, electric to electric. But more times it was me on some secondary instrument, pedal steel or bouzouki, even fretless banjo, and just trading licks, so to speak, or trading spots um, with Buddy. The singing part was really huge for me, and then the playing with Buddy as another lead player was also a really big for me.
Can you talk about another well-known song if yours, Long Time Gone, how that came about, and how it ended up with the Dixie Chicks?
Right. Well, it started as a song I wrote on a Saturday morning watching cartoons with my kids. So I had a pad of paper and just, I'm not paying full attention to the paper, but a little bit, and not full attention to the cartoons either. But I noticed that I noticed I was like writing and that something was good here or something was going on. And so I left the cartoons and just, I remember, leaving and working on it because I thought there was something coming together. Um, and then recorded it with Tim O'Brien. So Tim and I were doing a bunch of traveling together and doing a duo thing, in this country, but also in England and Ireland and stuff. And so we put together a record of songs and then recorded them out at my house uh, for a week. Uh, and Long Time Gone was one of them. And basically, the Chicks were fans of Tim O'Brien and me, uh, and they knew the record. They had the record, so they actually recorded two songs off of that album that Tim and I did. A song of Tim's that he wrote with Gary Nicholson called "More Love." They put that on that next record, and then they put "The Long Time Gone" on their next record as well. So I know they were listening. They love music, and so they're listening to music from whatever source it can come from. I always felt they were very big music listeners, and somehow they were uh, they were on our radar, or we were on theirs.
So talk a little bit about your podcast now that you're on ours.
Yeah, yeah. My podcast it's called New Moon, New Music. So every new moon, which is, I always say that full moon gets all the credit, it gets all the publicity. But new moon happens just as often on the opposite side of that. So uh, it gives me an opportunity to stand in front of an iPhone or my son's, however is recording me, and talk about music, kind of in detail, from the song point of view or the arrangements point of view. So I might play, well, like I've done my dad's record. I think I took 2 episodes to do that. So I'd go through each cut, talk about, the first soloist is Dan Dugmore, but the second one is my brother Denny, or this is a song, I've just kind of go in depth, an impromptu kind of thing. I have notes, but otherwise I just make it up. Uh, and It's something I do with my son, Abraham. And he edits it and puts in pictures and throws in the music and does all that technical stuff. And so it's something that we're doing together, which I love. Just that alone is enough reason for me. But it's things I also want him to know about me. So a sideline is um, he is hearing these stories. He is hearing, what happened at the session or what funny thing happened or what crazy thing. And it's just sort of that kind of detail that I talk about that people, who are interested in. Well, for example, I did 2 episodes on Malcolm Holcomb because I produced a record on Malcolm. And so I go talk about Malcolm, you know, um, and the songwriting part of it, or the composition, or the who I had playing harmonica on this one, or kind of go into a little back, B-roll approach to talking
Mhm.
about music.
And what other projects you've got in the works?
Let's see. Just today, I'm sending a record of my brothers, all my brothers who are alive. We had one brother pass away 3 years ago, and he was kind of our music centric brother, very good guitarist. Um, and he taught me music theory and harmony and all that. Anyway, I've just completed a whole album with my brother, so that's being mastered uh, very soon. So that's going to be a release um, probably in the next 3 months, something like that. Um, what else do I have? I have a string quintet record where I had someone write charts, a real chart writer, a real writer of strings, with some of Nashville's best sort of studio reading players. I've also done a recording with another kind of string record, of more like Darrell and Brittany Haas and Paul Cowart. I've done 4 songs with those guys. And so I'm doing this little, if I think about a project, I'll just kind of go do it. It doesn't need to be 12 songs. It could be 2 songs. Uh, so I notice I'm doing a lot of that kind of stuff, experimenting around a bunch. And so I got all kinds of stuff going on. I got all kinds of stuff.
Well, thanks for doing this, Darrell. It's a
Of
We
great.
course, I
appreciate
love
it,
what you
Darrell.
guys are doing. I love what
Well,
you guys are
thank you.
doing. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you guys for having me on this.
All
My
right.
pleasure.
Man, what a journey Darrell Scott has had. He's amazing. The guy's amazing.
Yeah, it's always a treat to talk to him. And we hope, we have some other really cool things coming up. Amy Rigby in the near future is going to be talking about her new autobiography. We're posting on our Substack site a compilation of record reviews every Thursday about new releases. So check that out. If you're not a subscriber, please become either a free subscriber or even better, a paid subscriber. We're going to have more and more bonus content for the paid subscribers. And we're gaining momentum, and we need your support to keep this thing growing.
I love your record reviews, by the way. If I had a dime for every band you've turned me on to in the last 20 years that I've known you, Jeff, I would be looking at retirement now, but I'm not. So we'll see you next time. Thanks for the support. Hard Rain and Pink Cadillacs. Until then.